All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the pod. Today, I'm joined by Andrea James. And normally I would go through and give you a line by line on her bio. But she's one of these people that's got, you open up on LinkedIn and it says like 28,000 experiences. Click here to see more. And so AJ, you and I know each other pretty well, but I really wanted to see if you wouldn't mind giving your professional background all the way from reporter to CFO. Like, how did you get started and kind of let people know where you're coming from?
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, awesome question. So I guess what I would say is I'll just start at the beginning. I'm a first generation college student. I was raised in a working class family in New Jersey. And so, they were like, I was like good at school. And they're like, you should go to college. And I'm like, all right. The teachers were like, you should go to college. And so I kind of didn't know what I was doing, really. I had to find my way through my career and figure out what I wanted to do. But in the late 90s, I was good at computers. Like, oh, AJ's good at computers. I grew up in New Jersey. And so you were like, oh, let me just go like do something with computers because everybody who does something with computers is rich.
Right.
Get rich, just go do something with computers. Okay, honey, you're so good at computers. Go do something with computers, honey. So I went, And so I majored in computer science. I minored in physics at American University of Washington, D.C. I ended up falling in love with journalism. September 11th happened while I was at college. I ended up adding a communications minor and just was like, I don't know if I want to like be at a desk. I want to be out there in the world. So doing something every day. And so I was like, I'm going to be a reporter. And so I got a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. And my first kind of career was in reporting. I was a journalist. And because, I was pretty cash strapped, right? Business journalism paid more. And so I guess I had you have a head for numbers. So I became a business reporter. And so I did that. I ended up working at Bloomberg News in London. Then I moved down to, now I was part of the Northwestern program, but my first daily newspaper journalism job was in Mobile, Alabama. And
New Jersey to Mobile, Alabama.
so I'm like this Yankee down there. And actually, I really loved it. Like, it's right on the beach. Like the beaches are gorgeous.
Right.
Mardi Gras culture on the Gulf Coast. United States is amazing. Like you can go to different places in the United States and like, it's like being in a different country, right? It's a very, very vast country, right? So anyway, so I moved down to Mobile, Alabama, and then I got a reporting job. And by the way, Hurricane Katrina hit while I was down there. So huge sympathy now to the folks dealing with like Hurricane Helene, right?
Right.
And so then got a daily newspaper journalism job, business reporting, at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. And I was in my mid-20s. My husband and I, we fell in love and like kind of put down roots in Seattle. And now I have that I'm married in Seattle, and I've never really actually left Seattle, although my career has changed.
And the PI, the Post-Intelligencer, is no longer around, right? I grew up in the 425, the burbs north of Seattle, and I remember people would have both delivery guys show up every morning, the Times and the PI.
And so around that time, I got headhunted. This is so crazy. I got headhunted by an investment bank in Minneapolis. And they said, we're doing a nationwide search. We want to hire a reporter, like a business journalist, and turn them into a stock analyst. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm going to go work on Wall Street.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, why not? And so I ended up becoming a stock analyst, and I did that for 7 years. And actually behind me, it's funny, usually I'm on Zoom, and so I have a hidden background, but this Worldview 3 satellite launch was actually my birthday in 2014. So it was, oh my gosh, it was 10 years ago. And I ended up covering aerospace and defense companies.
Right.
Actually, we're actually going to get to the point of why I'm even on this podcast. We're getting...
This is great.
Yeah, so when I was a stock analyst, I was covering aerospace and defense, and I've been a reporter on Boeing out here in Seattle. And I covered, the companies that had the classified satellite imagery contracts with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. It was so fun. So I'm covering aerospace. Yeah, right. And, around some of that time, and actually I'm going to make this really relevant so we can bring it back to the podcast and how I ended up here. Because I covered aerospace and defense, there were some things happening in the country, like with, sort of gun violence and stuff like that. And so I was like, because I was a stock analyst, I got paid to research industry and just become an expert on it. So I was like, I picked up coverage of Sturm Ruger and Smith & Wesson, the gun stocks. I was like, I'm going to understand the firearm industry. It was great. Like I ended up going to SHOT Show in Las Vegas. Like every January.
That's always a good time.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's just amazing, right? And so I ended up picking up covers of the gun stocks, and then around that time, my director of research, he had coverage of a company called Taser, and he's like, "You cover the gun stocks, you should cover Taser." Okay, so I picked up coverage of Taser as a stock analyst. So I'm an analyst on Taser stock. The ticker was TASR. I also covered my claim to fame, by the way. Like Google me was Tesla. I covered Tesla. And there's a whole story of how I ended up with Tesla, but it doesn't matter. We won't have to go into it. But I ended up with
That's
Tesla.
another podcast. And yes, I only want to hear that story.
Google it. Like I've done podcasts on Tesla. So I became like this expert in Tesla. Anyway, so I ended up covering Taser, and they had this like side business, this like money losing body camera business, you know, and they're like, oh, it's going to be in the cloud. And they had a research and development office here in Seattle, which is where I'm based.
Right.
And I went over there, I got to know them. And basically I remember writing this research note. I think this was like 2015. And I was like, Taser, bringing the Internet of Things to law enforcement, because the Internet of Things was like a buzzword in like the mid, what do you call them? The
IoT everything. I remember that really well. Yeah.
I mean, it was all about IoT and everything's gonna be connected. And actually we are sort of in the Internet of Things, but like nobody calls it that anymore. But like, it's like cloud in the, like the turn of the millennium, like everything.
Yeah,
like,
but with refrigerators and stuff too. Like, yeah.
Totally. We're totally in Internet of Things. But we don't even use the word Internet of Things anymore. We just call them things, right? Like,
right. Yeah. That's a great point.
Just like actually when I ended up, computer aided dispatch, when I was at Axon, we were like, why are we calling it computer aided? Like everything is computer aided. You wouldn't say computer aided banking. You should just call it dispatch, right? Like, but anyway, so I ended up covering, you know, Taser. I covered aerospace and defense. Around 2016 or so, I was really starting to burn out on that. My husband and I were trying to have our second child. And I was like, you know, I'm going to I don't know what I'm going to do next, but like, I'm just going to, you know, step away from being a stock analyst on Wall Street and maybe I'll be an executive coach. And so I ended up coaching a little bit. And around that time, Elon at Tesla was like, you know, come do investor relations for me. So I was like, okay. So I ended up doing investor relations for Tesla. I was doing investor relations for Tesla for about 9 months. I had had my second baby by that point. I ended up on maternity leave. And I got a call from the former Taser. It had just changed its name to Axon. And they were like, we need help turning our Wall Street reputation around. I flew down to interview, brought my baby, the whole family, flew down to interview. They had a CFO had just joined. He had joined in April of 2017, and I ended up interviewing in August of 2017, and he was sort of building a new team and was really heavily recruiting me to go work for the former Taser, which had now become Axon. So I flew down and I interviewed, and I was really excited by the chance to be part of a finance turnaround.
Right.
And the body camera business was still losing money, and Wall Street was like, what are you doing? Shut this thing down. This is not the future. Like, this is a waste of money. The police don't want them.
Public law enforcement company. What are you doing? Yeah.
Totally. And so I was like, this will be really fun. They had this growing SaaS business, software as a service. And so we ended up joining Axon in 2017, and I stayed there for 6 years. It was the most amazing 6 years. I grew in my career. I joined as vice president of investor relations, worked my way up to senior vice president of strategy, built the team. They're now actually, we just executed on a drone company this week. And I was like, oh, I remember we negotiated the call option on that.
Right.
So 6 years there. After becoming a senior vice president of strategy and investor relations, I ended up becoming chief communications officer for a little over a year. And then finally was like, I've done everything there is to do here. I think I want to do something else. Communications was great, but I really wanted to get back into more of a finance oriented role. Took 6 months sabbatical, and then I popped up. I'm at my now I'm at a healthcare company. I'm a CFO of a very, very, very small healthcare company. I'm helping to build something which I really, really enjoy. Not under the scope or lens of this podcast. It's molecular diagnostics, completely different industry, but very, very engaging for me. But I'm still capital markets facing. I'm still facing Wall Street, still dealing with finance, capital raising, all those fun things, and helping to grow something from being smaller to much bigger.
Okay, well, now you guys can see why I wanted AJ to come on the show. I mean, just an incredible journey across the top. I think people will obviously be interested in what it's like to work with Elon and Rick Smith. I mean, two like huge personalities. I don't want to make this about them, but I'm curious any stories to share of like those big heavyweights that, people have definitely heard those names.
Yeah, I mean, I think all geniuses are misunderstood in some way. And so, they're different, very different personalities. Rick Smith I'm still in touch with Rick Smith. I absolutely adore him. I think he's, an amazing founder, CEO. Tasers, it was founded. So this, he's done one thing his whole life and
Yeah, built it from the ground up, right? I
yeah.
mean, this is a guy who's transformed the industry.
One thing look, I'm not necessarily the person who always knows what the next hot thing is, but I know when I see someone who like, when they say something and it's a way that I had never thought about something before. And Rick Smith is absolutely that. Elon Musk is obviously that. So, back in 2011, I think it was, I had a buy rating on Tesla when all of the rest of Wall Street was kind of like, what is this? There hasn't been a new car
I
company.
wish I'd been reading your tips.
I know. Yeah. Well, and, people have done well. And so in that stock, obviously it's, they're, I mean, it's been lately, but I mean, compared to 2011, right? They've grown from nothing. And I saw a lot, like you've got to love the visionary founder CEO. I mean, you're a founder, you get it. Like, so I do have a heart for founders, founder-led companies. There's just something about them, I think that they have a different flavor than non-founder-led companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. And that, I mean, that's part of how you and I got engaged, and working together. You're an advisor to Multitude Insights, partially because you've had this like wild ride and, you know what it's like to build things. So, it's been fun for me to get to work with you as well. I want to dig in a little bit on, the investor relations side of things, right? Particularly during your time at Axon, public safety industry is weird. I mean, Rick Smith said it himself, we needed a makeover, right? What are some of the things about investing in a public safety company, a public safety company, that maybe people don't know about? Like what are some of the dynamics at play with both investors, who are like making, big strategic investments here, and also like running a public company in this space?
Yeah, I love the question. So there are different types of companies that have investment profiles. So when I joined Axon, I remember when I flew in for the interview, I put up on screen Tesla's shareholder list and all the investors who kind of owned Tesla as a growth company. And I pulled up Axon's shareholder list, and it was a totally different shareholder list. They didn't have a growth company shareholder list. So what happened was the taser business was a high gross margin product, right? It was like 70% gross margin back then. And so it was book and ship. It's like, the police agency orders them, you ship them, you book the revenue. That's it. Very simple. And so Axon was trying to build this subscription hardware, software, body camera business. What is this business model? They were plowing so much money into research and development. They were hiring software engineers. I'm sure you know, Matt, software engineers are not cheap. And so the kind of shareholder who owns the taser business hated the body camera business. Like, why are you putting all this money in research and development? Shut the body camera business down, turn off the cash burn, like just collect this royalty stream off a teaser for the rest of your life and we will be happy. And Rick Smith, there's actually a story at Axon, and I think it's totally fine to tell it. I wasn't at the company at the time, but they had done a vote internally at Axon. This would have been prior to 2015, where they polled the employees of the company and said, should we shut the body camera business down?
They did a vote.
Yeah. And
wow.
A majority of the employees said, yes, shut the body camera business down. It's a drain. It's a distraction. And Rick Smith stood up in front of the whole company. He put a slide up that said, the road home goes through Berlin. And he said, not only are we not going to shut down the body camera business, we're going to double down our investment. We're going to invest more into it. And Axon lost money on body cameras for 10 years before they turned a profit.
Wait a minute. That's kind of wild if you think about it, right? I mean, he's basically said, hey, I want to see what my people think. And then said, no, you're wrong. This is exactly what we're going to do. Like, that's wild.
Yeah. But so inspiring, right? Like, if you're like, the road home goes through Berlin. I mean, if you think about that reference, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, and, for what it's worth too, for like any entrepreneurs listening to this, like, that's a founder with conviction. You hear VCs talk about this all the time. Hey, we're not backing ideas. We're backing founders. We're team first, yada, yada. I mean, many of them might be full of it. I don't know, but that's high conviction. That's there's a future here that I can see that you can't see. You need to trust me. Let's go.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
Think about this. You have to have product market fit. You have to have product market fit. But if you just product market fit isn't enough. I mean, it is foundational, but the founder or the people managing the team, because you're going to stub your toe. You're going to have days where you just want to be done. You don't want to work anymore. You're frustrated. And it's like the people who can stick to it, but not only stick to it, but motivate everyone else and be a real leader. Like that's who you follow, right? That's who I want to be as a leader, right? Like I say on my LinkedIn, I'm at my best in a crisis. Like, I don't like crises. Like I don't want them to happen, but it brings out the best in me.
Yeah. Under pressure.
I get calmer. Anyway.
It's not to totally dive into that topic, but like, I'm kind of the same way. Like when things are like copacetic and like cruising along, call it like 80% throttle, right? I go back to my like naval aviator days, right? We're cruising at 1010 for the EP3 people listening, right? Like, that's fine, but I find myself like wandering, right? And I like to turn it up, right? And like I need more things coming in, and like that's when I can operate most cleanly. I mean, maybe that's the psychosis of early stage founders, but like that's kind of the fun part, I think.
It is. It's so fun. The investor relations at Axon, it was really about making sure we were getting in front of growth investors. And one of the things I said many things at the time. I was like, our insides match our outsides. Like what we're doing in the company, we're going to share. But if something isn't great, that's okay. We don't need every investor to love us. We want the right investor, because if you have the wrong investors, you're going to be in a world.
Say more about that, AJ. Sorry to interrupt the train of thought, but like, what do you mean, like the right investor? Like, what does that look like?
Okay, so I will tell you, there are investors who invest for growth, and Axon is a growth company. And so we had certain investors, the wrong ones, were like, why are you spending so much on research and development? We recruited into Axon a very large growth investor. I'd rather not name them. They were also a growth investor in Tesla. And I remember sitting down with the CFO and myself, and that growth investor asked the CFO, are you investing enough in research and development?
Great question to hear.
Right? Like, why aren't you investing more? Like a huge percentage of our revenue was going into research and development. To ask that question, that's the right investor. I remember saying, I wish I could clone you.
Right. Yeah. I need about 500 more of you.
You want, because investors come in different flavors, just like companies come in different flavors. And if you're a growth company, you're under earning, meaning that you're earning less than you could earn if you shut off the research and development or the investments for growth. And so you want investors who really want that top line growth, because that's who you are. Like conversely, like if you were the kind of investor who really wanted something sort of more boring and steady, you're wrong. But you also wouldn't want the reverse of that. Like once companies slow down, you don't want growth investors anymore. You want the ones that want a dividend, right? Like some investors want dividends. Like why would you pay a dividend if you're a growth company? Growth companies don't pay dividends. They take
investing. Yeah.
Only buy companies, right? They're growing. And so the kind of company that pays a dividend is a very different type of company that is a growth company. And so I own dividend stocks. I think Starbucks plays a nice dividend.
Yeah, me too.
So it's great to have dividends. Yeah, dividends are great. But so you don't want an investor who wants a dividend. And actually Axon in the past, it had paid, back when it was Taser, it had paid dividends before.
Really? Okay.
So we have investors, when's going to be your next dividend? It's like, get out of here. That's not who we are anymore. And it's very painful. Investor turnovers are painful. And the thing is too, nobody will ever give you credit for like a turnaround or a new, what's that word? Oh, who is it? The BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah. Big, hairy, audacious goal. Yeah.
Like you don't get credit for the BHAG until it's proven out, right? You're not going to get credit. It's okay. We're just going to have conviction. We'll just keep talking about it. The stock will take care of itself. Just keep focusing on the vision.
Yeah. No, and I think it's just one of these things too, like public companies are just a different thing I have no experience with, to be honest, other than owning dividend stocks. Like you said, I think if people saw my investment portfolio, they'd be bored. But as a startup guy, like the pressures are very different. The scrutiny is very different. Can you talk a little bit more too about that scrutiny? So Taser, I think to those of us in the industry, was a noble thing, right? It was reducing gun violence by and for law enforcement, but I don't think that translated. I think it sounded like a stun gun to the public, right? And that sounds like worse in many cases. So like, how did you guys handle the like mission of the company with the public sector that you had to play with for the investing side?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So one of the things that like I believed in the product. So I can't do investor relations or sit with shareholders if I don't have conviction in the product. I absolutely
Right.
believe in the product. And I believed in Exxon's entire product line. Even myself when I was building my own team, we would hire people and they were slightly uncomfortable with the fact that we made a taser. I'm like, look, like you can't work here. You have to be comfortable because you have to stand behind the product. I do have a YouTube video of myself being tased, which actually
So
sometimes you can splice it in if you want. You can go grab it into the podcast.
I'll put it in.
Yeah, put it in. Seattle Police Department. I did the master instructor training. I actually have the fact that I'm a taser master instructor on my LinkedIn. I have it on my bio because I'm so proud of it, even though I've never been through the police academy. And I was very stressed out that day trying to like fired a blank. I firearm with blanks. It was the first time I pointed at someone and shot, like pulled the trigger, and it like I like started crying. I need to get back to my Excel spreadsheets, but I have so much respect for what police do.
Coming
Anyway,
from behind the desk to a gun in one day is pretty nuts.
so it's like putting me like a finance communications person, corporate,
Yeah.
like into taser master instructor training. And they put me in this box and like they had a guy coming at me and I had to make the split second decision. Do I pull the taser? Do I pull the firearm? Like I know it was a sim. Oh my goodness. I'm getting emotional. Like I needed a minute. Like I was like, and everybody was wonderful. And they had both male and female cops there, but I was like the only, well, there was another colleague, but like I had never been through the police academy. And like, so I'm just not in a job where I have to make these kinds of decisions. And like, anyway, when I had to pull the blank, like they were like, throw the taser down. And like, cause I got a knife and anyway, I did, I lost it. Like, I was like, I just need a minute.
Yeah. But you had some empathy for what these guys go through, right? I mean,
Totally. And just like, so where are we going with that? So, for me, it was very important to really understand the product so I could explain to the investors how the product worked. And so that meant when we had a negative news article, we had an investor base who was informed, right? And so in the beginning, there were always shots being taken at the product or at the company from the media.
I remember.
Yeah. And so what we did is we started to really really educate the investor base. And so what happened was after several years of me having worked there and like the investor base no longer, like the stock wouldn't even react if there was a negative article about the taser. And that's because the investor base was educated about the product. We made sure that they understood how it worked, just the basics of neuromuscular incapacitation, the basics of like the taser's not stopping hearts. Like, there's a lot of misperceptions. Like, I mean, you're selling to law enforcement. Most of what people know about law enforcement is, from Hollywood or TV.
Yeah, or CNN. Yeah.
And so a lot of it too is taking tech investors. It's like they understand software, they understand hardware, they understand high margin hardware. It's like, okay, all those things that you already understand about business, that's what this company does. It's just in a law enforcement public safety context. And then some of it is just market education about who public safety is, who's the buyer, all the different groups that influence those buying decisions.
Yeah.
As the company moved into corrections, educating the market that corrections is separate.
Yeah, different altogether. I mean, even in our own business, we separate the two. Like, when they ask about sworn count at a county, they say, well, are you including corrections there? No, it's a different beast.
It's such a great point. And so I remember when we went out and the market would run these, investors would run these calculations of how many tasers could you sell. And you're like, well, okay. And then you start to add in corrections, you start to add in federal law enforcement, because there's also different layers. You've got, federal, you've got state, you've got state patrol, county, local, municipal, and then you've got the correction system, which also has a federal component. Like, it's just making sure that we were defining the market accurately. And so as the company grew, our investor communication obviously got more and more sophisticated to really just, this is how we define the market. Here's how you think about it. Here's the size of the market. Here's the pricing, all that stuff.
I think so. That's actually really interesting you bring that up. Like the number one challenge that we faced when we were initially raising our first seed round of fundraising was, how do you size the public safety market? And I think like I wish you and I had known each other back then, because it's so hard to explain. Like, defense sales, very easy to explain. Who are you selling to? Well, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, I guess the Space Force now, and occasionally the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. I'll go look up those 6 budgets. I'll figure out, what the element line items are that we're going for, get a rough TAM from there. And okay, you feel good about it. Also, we know it's not going anywhere. But then you look at law enforcement, and, I think I had to like get very good at trying to articulate what this was. And like, sounds like maybe even similar for you. There's 18,000 branches of law enforcement plus and growing.
Yeah. Oh my
right?
goodness. Yeah.
Right. Which is good and bad. We can talk a little bit about that. I mean, 18,000 different agencies, probably 10,000 different procurement processes across those agencies. But there's a lot of good things in there too, is once you're in, you're kind of in and things like that. So that kind of takes me a little bit it's over to like startup life, right? So from the startup equation, right? You've worked at the high end of the public safety market. Like Axon is kind of like the 800-pound gorilla at this point, right? They have CAD. I guess we should just call it dispatch, as you said.
Yeah.
They have RMS.
Yeah, RMS records. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Drone and first responder. They have other AI report writing software. They have My90, which is an awesome product for community engagement. Kona Shen, shout out, like she's awesome, right? So it's like Axon, maybe Motorola, a couple others at the top end of that space. They have a lot of mind share, but like, where are the opportunities for startups? And I promise it's not a selfish question for Multitude. Like, we have a vision, we know where we're going, but like, how do you think startups play in this ecosystem? Are there good exit opportunities? Like soup to nuts, like how do startups play here?
It's such a great question. So when we were building the strategy team at Axon, one of the ideas that we had was, let's become experts on the ecosystem. And that includes staying close to the startup ecosystem. Rick Smith is a founder himself. He has a heart for founders. And so once people get into that sort of startup ecosystem with that company, they get time with Rick. The company will do strategic investments. Sometimes there's a strategic partnership, making sure that, you're staying close to the edge of innovation. Particularly larger companies, as they grow, you want to stay close to where the innovation is happening. And innovation is, I don't know, because I am not a startup founder. So, but like, by definition, innovation is something that's not happening that should happen. And so anywhere there's a problem, there's opportunity. That's what problems are. It's opportunity. And so if you think about, we're on this earth for this finite period of time, and we have a shot while we're here on earth to solve problems. And so anytime there's a problem, there's an opportunity. And so that's the brilliance of startup founders. You guys got to identify the problems and go solve them. I'll help you talk about it. But like,
which is a big problem talking about it, by the way.
Say it again.
It is a big problem learning how to talk about this in a compelling way, right?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a company that Axon had done a strategic investment in, and this founder, he's really good at talking about the problem. But Rapid SOS.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that's a really simple problem. It's like when you call 911, right? Your phone knows where you are, but 911 doesn't know where you are. But your phone knows where you are. So they built this, data pipeline to take the location data from your phone and give it to the 911 call center. So simple.
That was Michael Martin, right? At Rapid SOS. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And so that would be an example of like, there was a clear problem, and they're going out and solving that. And there's lots of that, right? You wouldn't say that every problem in public safety is solved, right? And so, and I think too, one of the things that I really appreciated the time I had at Axon is this sense of like, you're there to help public safety be more efficient, more effective. They have, their own mission, protecting the sanctity of life and making sure, communities feel safe and all this stuff. And so like in doing that, you get to kind of be a partner to them in where are you having challenges? What would you wish you had? And then
Right.
sometimes what was really fun is like you take these really brilliant technology minds and you get them together with people who are brilliant at public safety and law enforcement and like you can start to iterate. What if we do this? Well, what if we do this? What if you had this, and it's just, and that's how you get to the brighter future, right?
Yeah, one of the things we started doing at our business at Multitude is every engineer has to go on a ride along, like a minimum number, right? So, I don't come from law enforcement. I come from a military background, but I just saw an opportunity to build this company in this space. We thought it was an awesome space. We were sympathetic to what policing was going through. But as we've grown, we've added engineers who are, expert engineers, but they have no connection to what's actually going on the front lines. And so one of the things we did is like, you need to sit, like you're a tech guy, you're super smart, tech guy or gal, like you also need to go sit in the car, right?
You know,
You need to go
have
do that.
stories from that, right?
Say that again.
Well, like the funniest stories, like I was down in Arizona. I did a ride along too, but I was down in Arizona. I was doing a ride along with an engineer, like he was a software engineer, and the officer. And at one point, the engineer goes, "Is this a cup holder?" And the officer goes, "That's a rifle mount."
That's perfect. Yeah. I think we just cut it there. That's hilarious.
Is this a cup holder? That's a rifle mount.
Yeah. Short story from just even getting these scheduled. One of my engineers said, hey, I'm going to get in with this agency in Massachusetts, but they scheduled me for some weird time. It was like 8 p.m. to midnight. I was like, yeah, they work then. That's when they work, and it was just like, even like that, it sounds so simple, but even that is like an empathy thing for them when they're coding and thinking like dark mode makes sense because otherwise if I turn on the screen full bright, I'm going to blast this guy's retinas and he won't be able to see when somebody's doing something crazy.
Love that. What's funny? When I remember it with the Axon Body 3, and I think they switched to Axon before, I might get the versions wrong, but there were so many things that they learned with the body camera, even with iterations of body camera. Like, obviously the body camera needs to go dark at night for like stealth operations and stuff, and like not just be blinking. But then some like agencies needed to be blinking all the time when it's recording. So like, but one of the things that was so fascinating was there was like a mic or there was something, a hole on top of the body camera. I think it was the mic. I'm going to mess it up. But the point is that when the officers were eating, like mayonnaise would get dropped into it. Like you bite the sandwich and the mayonnaise drops into the mic. And it's like, you got to move it. And so then when we came out with the next iteration, we're like, we fixed this problem. We heard you. You're dropping mayonnaise into the mic or whatever it was. We fixed it.
We've covered the mayonnaise manifold.
We also had employees had to volunteer to wear the body camera. And it really teaches you, because you go to the bathroom and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm about to use the bathroom and I've got a camera on me. Like, what do we have? We have to have, you have to be able to turn things off and like stop things and like just all those little things of like, you have to put yourself in the seat of the customer.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a unique use case. I mean, you have to go sit with them. You have to go be with them. And which I think we're going to try to make this like a mandatory, like every year, everybody's got to go do one, and engage.
You should do it. I completely, the insights that you'll get, because you're taking people who are inherently smart problem solvers and you're dropping them into the seat of the customer, and the customer has their mandate, right? They're out doing, they're on patrol or whatever. And you have an inherently smart problem solver who's going to see things through a different lens, and you're going to come up with new insights. I love that the idea of dark mode is like a perfect example.
And one that I was sympathetic to as well as an aviator, we have everything in the cockpit, red lights, right? At night so that it's, very easy on the eyes. And but I didn't get that. I didn't think of that. One of the guys did and said, we're in the middle of this big UI refresh. Of course it needs to be dark mode primary, right? Like, why don't we just do that? So it's such an easy thing. AJ, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a couple of things. Like, you're kind of like outside looking in on the industry now. You've moved on. You're chief financial officer at a publicly traded biotech firm, right? But I know you care a lot about this industry, right? So not in the day-to-day management at Axon, outsider looking in, like what do you see in public safety, either from a technology perspective, like where are we going over the next 5 years, maybe 3 years, however far out your crystal ball let you see, But also maybe not even from the technology perspective, like manning, personnel, training, like what are you seeing this industry moving towards over the next, let's call it 3 to 5?
Yeah, so now that I'm like sort of outside of things again and I'm not as close to it, you start to approach it as a citizen of a community, right? So, I'm a resident of Seattle. My kids walk to school. My preteen daughter walks to school on her own. It's about a mile away in the city. So now I my approach to public safety is completely from the sense of, am I safe? Is my family safe? So I guess I'm not to just, so I guess the thing is for me, it's like, I just want it safe. Like I want it to be safe. I obviously I want to have, strong law enforcement that's able to, enforce laws. There's a whole political element here, especially in the West Coast where things are changing, but we kind of got far away from common sense for a while when it came to kind of enforcing certain laws. And so things are kind of coming back, but I'm not sure if that really answers your question from a technology standpoint. It's more of a policy thing, but yeah, let me think.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think it does answer the question. I mean, I'm just saying, like, all right, you don't work at Axon anymore. You're a citizen, right?
Yeah.
What do you expect of the agencies? In some cases, they're like completely under resourced in personnel, like headcount. And maybe that's a place where technology can come in and fill the gap. Or maybe it's like, hey, we need a whole rethink of what public safety is in the aftermath of all the BLM stuff that, kind of hollowed out some agencies.
So mental health issues, and this is the thing that like I don't know what the answer is, but from a public safety standpoint, mental health issues are major. And
Yeah.
I was just, I run 3.5 miles every morning in Seattle. And on Tuesday morning, I was walking, and this dude like rushed another guy. He turned on a dime and just rushed this other dude. I think the other dude looked like he was walking away. He kind of had like a satchel and a laptop bag. But the other guy, the guy who rushed him I don't know, his mental state was not. So there was a kid walking to school. I walked that kid to the end of the block, and then I was around the corner and I called 911. I said, hey, I just want to let you know. I have no idea if they're going to respond because there was a getting hurt. Nobody's hurt, but someone got rushed. Thank God he didn't have a knife. If he had a knife, that guy would have been stabbed. I said, look, I didn't see anything in his hands because I always check their hands. And I crossed the street. And this is the reality of like life. Like this is the reality of life. Like you see somebody and they're a little like, yeah, and you're just like, check their hands. My husband's, by the way, former military as well. So he's always like, he like married me. He's like, you're so clueless about situational awareness. You have situational awareness. Like I know the word situational awareness now, thanks to my husband.
Like I've heard that.
And he's like, wash their hands. I'm like, okay, and so, you like, and I've even told like my kid, like, just like cross the street. If you feel uncomfortable, just cross the street. But like, I don't know what the solution to that is. Is it a robotic solution? Is it a drone solution? Is it, they talked about the mental health issue, like mental health counselors in patrol cars, but like you still have to have armed backup because you can't.
Yeah, I mean, we have to enforce the laws in some kind of more aggressive way at some point.
And not even enforce the laws, but like if someone is armed, you don't send a mental health counselor to deal with somebody who's armed. Even if they have a mental health issue, you have to have like, everybody has to be safe. Like if you think about like, if there's like a shooting, law enforcement, has to secure the perimeter before the medical people can go in and keep them safe. Which is why when we had the Capitol Hill Occupy protests here in Seattle, we had a section of the city, the police couldn't go in. And this was in summer of 2020. And there was a shooting, but the ambulances couldn't go in because the police weren't allowed into that section of the city. And so people are bleeding out in the street. And the protesters were like, why aren't you going into the ambulances? And the medical workers are like, you can't go into an unsecured perimeter. You need the police to do that. And so there's a role for somebody who's armed in our very highly armed society to be in and secure things. And so there has to be more, like, I can see, like, sometimes it's just a mental health crisis. Like, if someone's naked, probably you can have a mental health person maybe deal with that. But, I guess, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but, like, there just has to be more. I don't know how you handle what's like the mental health aspect of public safety. That I think has, and just having grown up in the 80s, and I don't know, because I've lived all over, like, it feels like a problem that's like newer. Like it's like the last 10 years, this has exploded and I don't fully understand why.
Yeah. So on that point, I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good observation. AJ is like, that's why Axon invested in My90 and then brought it in house, right? Like that's like the community. They're trying to technology to enable trust, right, at the interaction point with law enforcement. That makes sense, right? So I think like there is a place for technology, but at the end of the day, too, it's like good policy is important. We can't just have cool toys. Like we can't just have cool technology and put it in the hands of law enforcement. Like there needs to be training and funding to support those things. More importantly, like leadership of these cities, right? So city councilors, mayors, attorneys general, like these folks all have to be on board. And I think that's kind of the cool part about being in a startup right now in the space is like, it feels like it's finally getting attention because the 2020 was like crisis point for the industry, I think. Like, would you agree? Yeah. So it's like,
Yes.
it's like, of course, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, COVID, like all these things contributing to a hollowing out. There will be like ripple effects for 15 years. I think that's why we're finally getting investment from the venture space into public safety startups. Myself, I have a number of friends in this space. We're all excited because we've all gotten funded when they can actually build the thing we want to build to hopefully improve society.
When in summer of 2020, so our stock, our investors were very concerned. First, it was like COVID, or, police department was going to put cameras. But then like when defund the police was a trending hashtag, I read defund the police protests. I mean, the whole world, there's all these protests. And I remember talking with the investment community and reassuring them, I'm like, you have to have public safety. If you don't have public safety, you know what you're going to have? Private safety. And only the wealthy will be safe. And it's just like with the schools. If you don't have good public schools, then you put your kid in the private school. So only the wealthy kids get educated. And it's like, you want to do that with public safety too? Like only the wealthy and private security and whatever. And they've got gated communities, but like everybody else is unsafe. Like clearly I have a passion, but it's just like, you have to have public safety. Like, and so I remember reassuring the investors, like public safety is not going away, right? There's waves crashing on the beach, but out in the ocean, there's a deep still water. Right? Where the water's not moving, public safety is going to be right. You got to have it. And so it's going to be okay.
I see why you are good at your job.
Yeah, you got to tap into the deep still waters, man.
Yeah, groovy. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about your like recent like management capital experience. So you've just taken over as a CFO, right? This is like not a total gear shift for you, but like a phase shift.
Yeah.
You're a pretty experienced leader at this point. You've worked, all the way up the corporate stack. You're doing public leadership things. That's pretty cool. But let's talk a little bit about like, what does it look like to come into a new organization, new industry, come in like 30, 60, 90 days? Like, what are you doing? What mistakes have you made? What's working? What's not working? Like, talk me through being a CFO and like coming in and just kind of getting after it.
So it's funny, like, and if Rick Smith wouldn't probably watch this podcast, but if he does see it, I really appreciate his counsel. I went to him in late 2023, like October, about a year ago, actually, in October 23. And I said, listen, I've kind of done everything there is to do here at Axon. I've loved it. We're getting big. We're in the S&P 500 now. I don't know, like I'm getting itchy, And he goes, take some time with your family. You should go to a smaller company. Oh, I'm like, okay. And so, Matt, you kind of walked me, we walked together in this journey a little bit,
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Yes, we have. And so I ended up doing that sabbatical for 6 months. I was still an advisor to Axon during that time, and I was doing the advisory board stuff, which I love. And I was like, I'm going to go to a small company. So I was looking at all these different smaller companies in different industries. Healthcare is like, my company right now makes donor-derived cell-free DNA testing for like organ transplant. Right. Like, so I remember, and one of the shareholders in this company, it was also a shareholder in Axon and was like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, but right. I love the fact that like, when I read even the LinkedIn profile of this company, I didn't understand a word of what they do. I was like, I called one of my friends. She was the chief nursing officer for Pacific Northwest Kidney Centers. And I was like, what does a kidney do versus a liver?
You're like really wishing I'd paid attention in high school anatomy and physiology.
Confidence in my own intellect. So I know I'm smart enough, but like I just never pay attention. Like I know you need them, but like I don't really like some. Is it filtering the blood? Is it filtering the urine? Like I don't know. And so
Filters. Huh.
I know the heart pumps. I know the vital organs are vital. Like and so
Right. All important, but like how?
and I was like an expert on like what Axon did, right? Like I could talk about the taser and how it works in my sleep, right? And it's just like
Right.
and so and Tesla too. I had been an expert on Tesla and I could talk about lithium ion battery technology. I mean, I would go deep in these industries. So I'm like, this is a whole new world that I get to go deep on and really understand it. So intellectually, and now I've been here 3 months and I can actually talk about our products, and explain them. And I think I'm very good explaining it to lay people because I was a lay person just 3 months ago. So I do enjoy that. I'm new to microcap land. So this company is like a 40 million market cap company. So even though we're publicly traded, we are like a startup that happens to be public. I mean, it's small. And so we just announced 2 days ago a $10 million pipe. And it's like, we just raised capital. At Axon, I did 2 equity follow-ons. The first one was, I think, $230 million, $250 million. And the second one was like over 300 million.
Right.
And we just raised 10 million. So the scale is so much different, right? Actually, it's harder to raise $10 million than to raise $200 million.
Yeah,
Because
you're making me feel better as a startup then.
it's so hard because capital loves company. And so a smaller deal is harder to do, believe it or not.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
I do believe it. Yeah.
So I just did my first pipe and we're still kind of, doing the closing document phase, taking a break to do this podcast. But so I'm still getting new to sort of microcap land, how it works in microcap. The scale of things is so much smaller. At the same time, what I love about it is you can go faster, right? Like you can, it's not decision by committee. It's like, just go. And I love that we're building something new. And I remember, it was like my first couple weeks on the job. I was down in our Nashville office. We have a lab in Nashville, and I was our head of sales, and we were doing Excel model together. We were coming up with the pricing model and stuff. And I'm sitting there in this kind of like old like office building, and you have to understand, Axon's offices are like the big shiny. Everything's so like
they're beautiful. Yeah.
Just like I mean, everything at Axon is so futuristic. Rick loves sci-fi. It's like working in a sci-fi movie. You're like on all the time. And here I am, it's kind of old carpet and like, and we're just sitting there and we had our product, like these molecular diagnostic tests are like stacked up in the corner in this office and it's old furniture because we're scrappy, right? We don't for cash, right?
I can smell this office right now.
Right. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Because I don't need it to be big and beautiful. I mean, I could see like that future potentially for this biotech or, but it's like, I just love like building something and engaging and like working with people and we're doing something, we're making a difference. It's just like, I don't know. I don't need all the fancy stuff. I mean, it's nice.
That's what makes the fancy stuff worth it. That's the fun part when you get to where Axon is with the glitzy office and all that, because you know that you started in the smelly office space with the tests stacked up.
You got it. And it's so fun. So it's fun to build and it's exactly what I wanted to do. I love, founders and that whole idea of building something small and going it bigger. And so having the opportunity to do that in my career, I'm grateful. I'm just grateful. Like it's fun to be here and it's small. The team I manage here as CFO is smaller than the team I manage as SVP at Axon.
Yeah.
So it's just smaller scale.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm also like, as your friend, proud of you for taking the jump and, moving over to a totally new thing. Like not everybody does that also like mid-career, right? That's kind of a big, you got to drop it into a new gear and like get after it. So that's inspiring, I think too, for me knowing like, there can be more chapters to these type of things.
Yeah. One thing I will say, if anyone's listening, and I don't know like how sabbatical, if like, I have to say, take a sabbatical. I took 6 months. That was about all I could handle. I had people were like, take a year. And I was like, I'm going to drive my family crazy. Like I have to.
Yeah. It's better for everyone if I go to work.
If I go to work, there will come a phase in life, I think, where maybe I want to go a little bit slower, but I have really good, like, I run every morning. Like I really take care of my physical self. I'm in my 40s now. I'm approaching my mid 40s. My husband just had his 50th birthday. Like we want to, yes, we want to stay active physically. So that was really important. Like, there were certain opportunities where there was like a commute involved where I wouldn't be able to run every morning. Like for me, it's like, I have to be healthy. So anyway, so just, it's worth it to take some time and think about like, what do you really want to do? Where do you want to contribute? What kind of leader do you want to be?
You,
And
you
then
preempted one of my next questions, which is like, what are the things that you've said no to, that you're really glad you said no to? Because I think that's one of the things, entrepreneurs post-exit or even just mid-career people in public safety, like I think saying no is just as powerful, maybe more so sometimes.
I would say some of the stuff I said no to, it's either there's an NDA involved or here's what I'll give you some context on, and I'm proud of this. I have really tried to think about where I feel called or led and where I can make the biggest difference. And I've said no to things that were so much more prestigious. Like I almost wish I could tell you so that I could get the
Yeah.
credit. Like I can't. Like if you saw what I said no to, you'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? But I just cursed. I hope it's okay.
You're good.
So it's like, I think I admire, let me try to think about how I want to say this. I really admire people who are famous, very well known, have done a lot, but I don't need to rub up against them and be in proximity to feel great about myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I'm okay with somewhat obscure biotech. Screw it.
Yeah.
I don't have to be in proximity to fame. And some of the things I've said no to, I think I would be more famous, if that makes sense. And
yeah, it does.
There's a sense there. I have a sense for me that those decisions would not have been wise. And so I don't. Yeah,
I think you can feel that stuff too, AJ. Like I have been faced with a couple of those, like even coming out of graduate school, right? Like offer at a really cool company in hand, big paycheck, right? Worthy of the 3 years I spent at MIT and Harvard, right? Fancy.
yes,
Or go take $40,000 a year to start this company in public safety where most of the investors you talk to laugh in the first 5 minutes of the pitch. Which one of those is sexier, right? But you have to you kind of know like somewhere down here that you're like, this is actually going to be way cooler, way more fun, probably more impactful, probably going to make hopefully more people's lives a little bit better.
I love it. How did you know though? Like, did you wrestle?
I wrestled. So yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think also like peer pressure from, I went to these fancy graduate schools, right? No, I didn't go to a fancy undergrad, but this was like coming out of the Navy, Harvard, MIT, like, oh my God, I'm here with these people. They're brainiacs, right? By the way, the business school at MIT where I went, that's where the dumb kids are at MIT. We're all there, right? The smart ones are in the computer science labs.
So funny.
That said, these people are taking big jobs, right? McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, and then like every Fortune 500 company ever. The paychecks are astronomical. And like the athlete in me, right? I was a rower in college, right? Like military guy, like the competitor in me was doing some paycheck measuring, right? Like, whoa, that's kind of like, I thought I would be there coming out of these schools. Like, man, I was going to go make some money. That's like one of the reasons to go to these places is economic security. But then I just kind of had this nagging thing where like, I'm going to hate it in 10 years. I can see it. I'm mid-level manager at McKinsey, right? Making great money, but I'm beholden to somebody else's schedule and I'm not doing stuff that I actually give a shit about. Right. So
Yes.
like, I don't know. It was just one of those things. It's like a nagging, like, I want to do something fun. I want to do something cool. And like that voice was louder. Like shout out credit to my wife too, for like helping, kind of disambiguate all that and be like, also having the like partner power to be like, go do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very easy for her to say, Matt, we need to make some money. Go do that. By the way, she's a very successful CEO on her own. But like her being willing and able to say like, Matt, I think you're going to be happier if you go do the hard thing that doesn't pay well.
Oh, I love that. I think about so much of like what do I want my days to look like? I look back on my life, like, what are the decisions I wish I had made? And sometimes I just feel like my 80-year-old self knows the right path. And so my 80-year-old self, has made all the right decisions. And so I kind of try to listen to what she would do. And that includes like my family. Like I have 3 kids, and my husband and I always say we're the co-founders of Family Inc. You
Yeah,
know,
I saw that on LinkedIn, by the way.
yeah, because that is one of the biggest accomplishments. Like, yes, I'm a CFO. It's like awesome, and at Axon, I've had amazing success, and it just gives my kids more opportunities. Really, I mean, it's like, uh, you know, my son, he's 2, like he's about to be 3 this month, actually, and he's my last kid, and so like, it's like I get to see him every morning, and I don't know, it's like that balance of like, I want to go do great things. I need to be intellectually engaged, but like I also need to be able to be there for them. And I can't do something where that they would suffer either. And so I've always made decisions where, you know, there's always sacrifice because I work hard. Like I feel like I never get to really have a lot of time to myself, but at least my family and my job has always gotten like the best of me, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I think that maybe that's even like a natural closing place for us. And so I think I'll ask you my traditional closing question. Speaking of your 80-year-old self, what is the most pure and unadulterated fun you've had in the last year or two?
No, oh my gosh, the most fun. Well, okay. I took my family to Disneyland. And I'd never been to Disneyland. And on my sabbatical, that was one of the things that my sabbatical, I was like, we're gonna do 3 things. We're gonna go see my cousins in North Carolina. We're gonna go skiing. And we went on a ski vacation, and then we're gonna go to Disneyland. And we went to Disneyland, and I was like crying during the parade. I'm the cheesiest. So I would say probably like Disneyland. I love also roller coasters, although the one in California, the credit coaster was shut down, so now I have to go back.
Yeah.
Love roller coasters and water slides. Like, put me on a water slide and like, whoa.
I know where the next investor conference for Oncosite is going to be.
So yeah, no, I have to tell you, amusement parks, like, thank you, capitalism, for inventing this completely pointless experience. Like, there's no human evolutionary point to an amusement park. I love them.
Period. The end. I mean, and AJ, I mean, that's part of why I love spending time with you. It's always a good call. It's always fun. So thanks for coming on to the pod. Andrea James is this Chief Financial Officer at Oncosite Corporation, my advisor at Multitude Insights, and also a former Chief Communications Officer and Investor Relations Head at Axon. Thanks for coming on the pod. Hey everybody, Matt White here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Multitude Insights, and that's kind of my primary day job. But I started this podcast because I wanted to have conversations with the people that I found interesting. So that means the people on the front lines in law enforcement. It means the investors investing in companies, building in public safety. It means leadership and all the people that kind of make this thing work. Right. So if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to see more like it, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, the follow button, whatever it might be on whatever platform you're viewing this on. And I'd love to have you along for the journey. Talk to you soon.